Hey, Brian Baldwin here. I'm going to walk through an introduction of what is ArcGIS Online. So, you're going to be very familiar with ArcGIS Pro, which is the desktop software, and also a very useful and common tool to use throughout this semester and hopefully throughout your professional career will be ArcGIS Online. So it's a full ecosystem that allows for web-based mapping or web-based GIS. You can do data analysis, data management, and the real power of ArcGIS Online is the ability to share maps, applications, to build mobile applications, to collaborate with others and use authoritative information that's just available as web services. There's real-time data, there's 3D, and there's a whole host of other applications in ArcGIS Online that are all web-based that you can use in different domains. So this will be a quick introduction to what ArcGIS Online is and what some of the capabilities and use cases can be for its application. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing to be aware of with ArcGIS Online is that it's powered based by a named user. And so you can have credentials for ArcGIS Online that are free, and they're called public credentials or public accounts. And there are also accounts that are provided by universities or local governments or any organization. And there's also individual accounts as well, if you want to pay a small kind of annual fee. So let's start by going to just arcgis.com and signing in. So for RIT, the way that they have their account set up is if I come to this main page, I would type in RIT, ArcGIS, and that'll take me to the RIT domain. So RIT, arcgis.maps.arcgis.com, and I'll hit continue. And then this is going to take me to RIT's login. So the credentials that end up getting used are via Shibboleth or via the your accounts that you would normally just use for other RIT infrastructure or computing. And I've got my name in here already and my password's already saved, and so I'm going to click login. And so every user in ArcGIS has different capabilities that are tied to that username. So none of you really need to go to this tab, but this organization, if I was an administrator or if I was more of a power user in this organization, then when I click here, I would then be able to see a lot more information and also maybe add licensing, administer licenses, add new users, and I can also click here and see the members. And so the one takeaway here to remember is that for the users, every single person has their own username, has their own credential, and then that user has specific rights and privileges tied to what you can do. So you'll have different applications you have the ability to access. And if I click up here, there's a little drop-down button, and this shows me all the different applications that I have access to through RIT. So I'm jumping ahead of ourselves, but we're going to step back and just get started with some basic mapping. So that overview was for the members, for how you have your credentials and they give you certain rights and privileges. So up on the top here are a couple different selections you can make, and these are kind of the highest level organizational structure for ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to go first to the Map tab, and this will bring me to what's called a Map Viewer. And so the Map Viewer is basically a GIS that is completely web-based. And so to complicate things, right now we have two different kinds of map viewers in ArcGIS Online. And so there's one that just came up by default here, and this is sometimes called the classic map viewer. And then there's also a newer map viewer. And so for this demonstration, I'm going to go click on the new map viewer to log into that. But also be aware this is what the older framework or the classic map viewer framework looks like. And the new one still does not have all the same capabilities of this one, but we're just going to start with the new one because that's going to be kind of the application moving forward. So if I click open in new map viewer, this will now take me to the web-based map viewer. So basically, again, a GIS on the web. And so what it does initially is it just starts me up with a blank base map. And so any base maps that I have access to in my organization because of this credential will be available to me in ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. And if I go over here on the left-hand side and I see an option for base maps, and if I click that, I could come through here and now change or toggle out the base map that I want to have visible and see. So let's pick a different one just to show what this looks like. So I'll click light gray canvas. And so there's a wide range of different base maps that are available to users, and you can actually custom build your own as well if that's something that somebody would want to do at some point. What it means to have a web-based GIS and what ArcGIS Online is and the power of it. So you can think of it from working as going from left to right. The left side gives you bigger, broader options, and then the right-hand side lets you configure what you've selected in the left-hand side. So let me show a quick example of that. Let's go here to layers, and I'm going to hit add a layer. And so right now it's searching for layers in my content, and we'll get to this in a couple minutes to be able to walk through what that means. But instead of searching for data in my content, I can drop down and I can look for data in other places. I could search just generally across ArcGIS Online, any maps or data or layers that people have just shared with the community. I could look in the Living Atlas. The Living Atlas is a place that has content that is authoritative coming from multiple different sources. This is all curated by Esri. And I'm going to start with this. So I'm going to click Living Atlas. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to search for hurricane. And so I have the ability here to add in data related to active hurricanes and cyclones, recent hurricanes, hurricane evacuation routes. You can see a number of different layers of information here that are now available to me. And again, these are available through the Living Atlas. So these have been added in and curated by Esri, and they're coming from authoritative sources. So let's add in this historical hurricane tracks just to take a look at it. We can see it was published out by the federal user community. And all I have to do is click here, add, to then add this layer or add this data to the map. And so a very important concept to be aware of when you're using data and maps and layers inside of ArcGIS Online is the fact that you don't need to own or be the owner of data to be able to manage and modify or change symbology inside of this map. I might not own the data that this map is pointing to, but I can own this map container and I can change symbology or the attributes and the data that's available in this map and shared with others, but I'm not modifying any of the information that this is pointing to. So let me zoom out a little bit here, just zoom me into Miami. And again, these are all these different storm tracks. And you can see the data loaded up, and it has a default symbology already provided for it. So it's showing me the historical hurricane tracks from 1842 to 2020, and it's giving them different colors for the different category that those storms were. So let's zoom out a little bit more, and this is going to be kind of a busy map. So very cool. I'm going to click back here on this add layer just to go back. And now this is showing me all of the layers that I have active inside of my map. And so if I click on this layer, and you can see this is already active because it has the blue selected here, I then get all of the other options for this layer inside of all these panes on the right-hand side. And so if I click Properties, which I already had selected, I can change the symbology, the appearance for this. And a really quick example, this would be just the transparency. So let me fade this out. And you can see I can make that whole layer a little bit more transparent to be able to see through it. And let me actually change my base map quickly so we can get kind of a black base map to draw these hurricane tracks on top of. And I'm going to have a streets at night, so that's pretty good. And another simple one is just this dark gray canvas. So I'm going to select that. And Florida kind of got faded pretty bad to the background, getting covered up by this, but I think this is a better start to go with at least. Because for this map, the purpose, and we're just doing this on the fly and showing some data, is that maybe I just want to highlight these storm tracks. And this is a really nice way to do that because it makes them really jump out a lot. Maybe the tracks that I'd want to fade more to the background are these Hurricane 2 or Hurricane 1s. And let's actually do that in the next step. So this is the properties for the overall map, and I'm not going to go through every one of these tabs, but these are all different options, again, with the layer selected that I have. You can see up here, historical hurricane tracks is currently selected. And so that is the layer that I'm modifying or working on. So if I click Style, this would be the symbology for this map. If I go down here and hit Style Options, I can manage or update what this map even looks like. So let's take that Category 1, or the tropical storms, and I can select this one layer. You can see I selected this one Category 1, and I want to make just that line a little bit more transparent. So let's fade that up to maybe 60%. And I'm going to do the same thing with the tropical storms to kind of fade those out a little bit more so they don't dominate so much of the map. And you can see they had already applied this a little bit. And same thing with the tropical depressions. And I'll hit Done, Done, and Done to then apply that symbology into the map. There's some other options here. I could filter data, apply effects, change the pop-up. The pop-up is if I click on the map anywhere in here, and a user is making a selection of data. So I just clicked, and you can see now the mouse, wherever I clicked, is looking at what information was there inside of the data layer. So it's telling me something unknown, maximum wind speed, and there were 14 records in that location I clicked. So this was part of a storm Wilma of Abel. It's giving me that year, the knots, and the speed. And this pop-up could look any way that I want to, so I could configure that to look a number of different ways. I could change the fields, what data is available that I have pushed out in this map. How about labels, configuring charts, the ability to search. So there are a number of different options that I can take and use that are available to me with this data set. The next thing here I'm going to show is I'm just going to save this. So I'm going to hit Save. And let's call this Florida. And we'll call it Historical Hurricanes. I'll give it a tag. And summarize it. Historical storm tracks in Florida. And I'm going to save the map. And it's saving it in a folder, and the folder is just up in ArcGIS Online, so it's basically just saving this configured map that I've just created. Again, the data I don't own. I don't have any information that I'm managing or storing anywhere. I'm just basically storing a file that is looking at the configuration of how this map is configured and set up. And I just saved it with a name, a summary, etc. And so that was the map viewer. So we've looked at users, how the user can build content with different rights, create data and information, and then share it or create maps. And now we're going to go up to this selection here, and this gets us back to kind of those main category groups that we saw earlier. The next one I'm going to do, because it's closely related to the map viewer, is something called a scene. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'm going to click Scene. And this is the way that you can start building out 3D applications or 3D maps. And so similar to what we just did, you can build out your own data. You could publish data from ArcGIS Pro. You could search the web for data or ArcGIS Online and you can add it in here. Or you can search across the Living Atlas and look for information and layers to add into this scene as well. And so a fun location to fly over to, because we don't even need to add in any information, is we'll go over to the Grand Canyon. So it looks about the same as it did in our 2D map before so far. So we've got to get in a little bit closer to start to get the effect of the 3D. So first, let me change the base map, and I'm going to change it to be imagery. And so within ArcGIS Online, there are base maps and there's also imagery that is just provided. And you can see my dot there for where the Grand Canyon is, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit using my mouse wheel. And now I'm going to click on my mouse wheel and hold and pan up a little bit. Now I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. So this isn't just for topography. You could also add in buildings or cities. You can also pull in LiDAR information or build out 3D meshes. So there's a lot of really powerful use cases right up in the web. And you could also build out scenes that could then be pulled into a mobile device. So there's both 2D and 3D up in ArcGIS Online. And any layers or data that you add in, you could reference from ArcGIS Online or from the Living Atlas, or you could publish your own data to manage and then view here. So this is a scene. And so after you've already built out all of this content, where does it go and what does that start to look like? So now we're going to look at the My Content section of ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to go up to the Home tab here. And again, I get that drop down for these kind of high level categories. And I'm going to select Content. And it's asking me if I want to leave or stay because I haven't saved this. Same as the web map, I could save the scene and then come back to the same location and have a project, a starting place. So I'm going to hit Leave Page since I'm not going to save this. And so I clicked Content. And so this brought me to all of the information and the maps and the data that I am the owner of and that I'm managing. And so there'll be a couple of different kinds of items that you'll see here. And also a good way to think about this is you've got your high level organization here. So you've got the home, map, scene. So we've already talked about those. You've got content. And then after I've selected content, I'm now here in content and I have selected my content. There's a favorites. There are groups. I could view content that is shared throughout my organization. In this case, what other data have people at RIT shared? Or the Living Atlas, which we've already talked about. And so right now I have selected just my content. And within this area, I could also then create folders to better organize and view anything I've built or shared or created. And then in the middle, this is all of the content that I have inside of that folder. So right now we're looking at all of my content, so everything I own. Here are web maps, here are layers, and it looks like that's all I've got right now. And there's a number of other information or data types that I could have here. And if you look down at this filter, you can see all of the different kinds of information or types of data that I could have. I could have maps, layers, scenes. We've already looked at the 3 of those. There could be applications, tools, files, etc. While we're here, a really important thing to be aware of is if I click My Organization, this will bring me to show me any data or layers or maps that have been shared by users inside of RIT. So you can see here we've got an application of editorial cartoons someone created and then shared with the public. See this little globe icon here. So this is something somebody shared with everyone. The little house icon means they've shared it with just the organization. Something the Malmo region, a map that someone created. So this is all of these data and layers, again, that are just shared with throughout RIT with a number of different people, or that people at RIT have shared with the organization and also the public that now you can view and use. And then the last one we already looked at a little bit, but from the map side, is this living atlas. So if I click here, this is authoritative data that is getting curated and managed by Esri. And there is coverage across the globe, and this data is getting provided by a number of different organizations. In the US, that might be the Forest Service or NOAA. In other countries, that might be their authoritative source of land-based information. In this case, you can see Eagle, which is a partner of Esri's in New Zealand. So that's some data for New Zealand. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see some Argentinian base information, etc. So you have data from the Living Atlas you can access. You have data from just your organization, in this case RIT, or your content. Let's go back to my content, and we're going to wrap this up by talking about how you can create applications and what some of the applications are that are available. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the map that we just created of the hurricane tracks, and I'm going to make an application that I could actually share out with the public. So I have this Florida historical hurricanes, and what I want to do is I want to create a basic mapping application for that to be able to share with other people. So here I can hit create app, and I've got a ton of different options available to me. And the one we're going to start with is this one called Instant Apps. And so I'm going to click Instant App. This is just an easy way to get started with creating a configurable web application. So here are a number of the different templates that are available to me. If you want to see what any of these are, you can click the sample and it'll load one up, or you can read a little bit more about it with the description. And once you have one selected, you can hit choose, and this will bring you into the builder after you give it a name and a title. So here we're going to call this my Florida Hurricane Tracks app. And I'm going to save it in that same location, just in the main root, and I'm going to hit create app. So now I'm getting pulled into the builder to then configure this application for me. If you can remember back to how we started, we created a map. All we did was add some layers in it, some data from the Living Atlas, that hurricane tracks the historical data. I modified the symbology just a little bit, and now we're going to take that map and put it into an application so that it's a little bit more user-friendly for a user. You can see it's giving me some dialogue for welcoming me to the setup page, which I could walk through to let me know how to work this. And so now I'm going to walk through these 4 steps, and it lays it out really, really simply for you to be able to get started. So I'm going to click select my map, and we want to use this Florida Historical Hurricanes. That's the one that I created. I'm going to hit select. And so now I'm getting a preview of what this application is going to look like here in this main pane. And then I'm going to continue walking through some of the configurations to get this set up. So I'm going to hit next for step 2. It says, do I want to have a legend for this? And yes, I want to have a legend, so I'm going to keep that enabled. Step 3. Do I want people to be able to scroll? I actually want to disable that because I want to keep this centered on Florida. Do I want there to be a list of layers? No, I don't. Do I want people to take screenshots? I actually want to read about this. So take screenshots of the app includes the legend and pop-up. Interesting. So if I want to allow that for users, it would be an easy button. Let's see what that looks like. You can see a new option just got added here, a little screenshot button. So this would make it really easy for users to load up this application and then take a quick screenshot of what they're looking at. Let there be search open at the start. And I don't want search to be available, so I have that toggled off. And let me hit next for step 4. And then I can configure where do I want these buttons or where do I want things to be set up in the view. You can see I could drag these to the bottom left or bottom right if I want to. And that was step 4. So when I'm all done, I can hit publish. And I'm going to confirm. And so it just warned me to say this app is not yet shared with the public. So right now I've created an application, I have a map, but they're both still just shared with me. And we'll take a look at those sharing settings in a second. And so I'm going to launch it just to take a look at the application and get a preview of how this thing turned out. So pretty cool. So here's my first application that I just created. And again, I didn't have to make any of this data. This is just looking at that open set of historical hurricane tracks. I could have modified the symbology inside of the web map a bit more for this, which would be fine. I also then have the ability to click anywhere on this application and get a pop-up and get the details. Users could come in here and get a screenshot of any of these locations where they are. And I could search. And so a really simple web application, but still one that is really, really powerful. And one that I could then take and now share with anybody in the world, and then they could access this application. So let's show how one would do that. So let me go back to my content, and I'm going to refresh this, and we should see our new application pop up here in a second. And so now that this is refreshed, I can see my Florida Hurricane Tracks app. That's called an instant app. And I've got my web map, the feature layer, etc. All these different types of information in my content. And so if I want to make this application now available for more people to see, I can just select that. And I'm also going to select the map that it's based on. And this is really, really important. So I have the application that's configured. But if I want to make this application visible to more people, it's using this web map behind the scenes. And so I have to have the same sharing for both of those pieces of information. And if I had a layer, I would need to do the same thing. And then right here, I'm just going to click share. And that's after I hit share, I can then set it to be in the organization so other people in RIT could see this, or I could select everyone, the public. And now anyone in the world that has this URL, as soon as I hit save, you can see the globe icon change there. I could then just send this URL to anyone, and now people could use this application. So that was a really quick run through ArcGIS Online. And we looked at 5 different things. The first one being users, what it means to have an identity, the ability to share content, and also what that username provides you. It gives you certain rights and privileges in an organization or in an account. Number 2, we looked at the ability to build maps and use the hosted map viewer. And remember, there's a new one, and then there's a classic map viewer as well. So you can modify symbology, change attributes, etc. It's a really powerful tool. Number 3 was the scene viewer. So not only the ability to build out 2D maps and applications, but you can also build out 3D applications as well and 3D maps. Number 4 was the ability to look at your content and start to understand what it means to have different types of layers, maps, and data. And now there's different types of maps and information in the Living Atlas, in your organization, as well as the content that you own or you control and how you can start to share that out. And lastly, number 5 was the applications. And that is the way you can start to take a map that you create and then configure that and then share it in a different way to provide it to more people or give a specific kind of experience that you want to share out. And honestly, I breezed over so many different topics. So one of the things that we skipped was analysis. So inside of the web viewers, you can start to do analytical tools and run analysis. Number 2, and probably most importantly, You can bring your own data. So from ArcGIS Pro or from spreadsheets or even editing inside of the map viewers, you can build out your own data sets and even start from scratch and define the definition of data layers and start building those out. So that's a really powerful tool. And lastly for me, and what I didn't even start to touch on, are the applications. And I showed a few of those and the ease of just getting started. But for me, it's something like the dashboarding tool. Dashboards, I think, are one of the most powerful things inside of the suite of tools. Not only the dashboards, but I think the mobile applications are probably next on board. The ability to collect, view, and just share information with people on a mobile device in the field is so powerful. And there's also a ton of different applications for specific domains and use cases, like ArcGIS Urban for 3D city design and site design and planning, or Business Analyst, which are tools to be able to look at site design and reports for, where's a new store and where could a new store location go. So I'll leave it at that. There is so much that you can do with ArcGIS Online, and there's a lot of different tools to go and explore. But hopefully this was a good foundation to get you started and excited to start looking with and playing with this ecosystem. Thanks.